The vanishing masterpiece. The rain hammered against the cobblestone streets of London, washing the dim glow of gas lamps into shimmering pools of light. Inside a prestigious art gallery on the edge of Mayfair, chaos reigned. The Venetian Dream, a painting valued at over £20 million, had vanished without a trace. All that remained was an empty frame, its golden edges now a cruel mockery of the artistry they once encased. Detective Linda Hartley stood at the threshold of the gallery, her keen eyes scanning the scene. Her trench coat dripped with rainwater, but she paid no heed. The thrill of a fresh case always quickened her pulse. Beside her stood her trusted partner, Oscar Reed, whose broad shoulders and analytical mind had become indispensable to her over the years. "What do we know so far?" Linda asked, her voice cutting through the murmurs of distressed gallery staff. Oscar adjusted his glasses, pulling out a leather-bound notebook. "The painting was last seen during the private viewing last night. Security footage shows no forced entry, but there's a 3-minute blackout in the recordings. The gallery's alarm system wasn't triggered, and there's no sign of a break-in." Linda's lips pursed. "An inside job, then?" Oscar nodded. "That's the theory. But here's the kicker. The gallery director, Henry Carlyle, received an anonymous note this morning." He handed her a crumpled piece of paper. The handwriting was jagged, almost frantic. "You'll never see the Venetian Dream again. Consider it my masterpiece, now." Linda's eyes narrowed. Not just a thief, but a provocateur. She looked at Oscar. "Let's start with the staff. Someone knows more than they're letting on." The interrogations. The gallery's employees were a colorful mix of personalities. There was Emily, the nervous curator, who could barely meet Linda's gaze. Marcus, the security guard who prided himself on an impeccable record. And Sophia, the enigmatic art restorer, whose aloof demeanor set Linda's instincts on edge. Emily was the first to crack. Tears streamed down her face as she confessed to a minor indiscretion. I've been selling information about upcoming exhibits to a collector, but I swear I had nothing to do with the theft." Marcus bristled at the accusation of incompetence. "I did my rounds as usual. There's no way anyone could have gotten past me." Sophia, however, was a tougher nut to crack. Her responses were measured, her expression inscrutable. "Art has always been vulnerable to human greed," she said with a faint smile. "Perhaps the thief simply loved the painting too much to leave it behind." Linda's instincts prickled. There was something about Sophia's words that felt rehearsed. A clue in the shadows. That evening, Linda and Oscar reviewed the gallery's security footage again. The blackout was indeed suspicious, but something else caught Linda's eye. In the seconds before the cameras went dark, a shadow flitted across the edge of the frame. "Enhance this section," Linda instructed. Oscar complied, zooming in on the image. The shadow resolved into a partial silhouette, a figure in a hooded cloak carrying a cylindrical object. The shape was unmistakable, a rolled canvas. "Whoever this is, they knew exactly what they were doing," Oscar said. "And they had access to the gallery," Linda added. "Let's dig into Sophia's background. She's too calm for someone who just lost a priceless painting." Uncovering the past. A deeper dive into Sophia's history revealed a surprising connection. 10 years ago, she had been embroiled in a scandal involving forged paintings. Though she was never formally charged, whispers of her involvement had tarnished her reputation. More intriguingly, she had once worked with a notorious art thief, known only as the Phantom. Linda's heart raced. Could Sophia be working with the Phantom again? Or was she the mastermind this time? The confrontation. Linda and Oscar confronted Sophia in her studio. The art restorer's calm demeanor faltered as Linda laid out the evidence. "Your connection to the Phantom isn't a coincidence," Linda said. "Tell us where the painting is, and maybe we can cut you a deal." Sophia's eyes flashed with anger. "You think I'm a thief? You're wasting your time." But Linda noticed something. A faint smear of blue paint on Sophia's wrist. The same shade used in the Venetian Dream. "Oscar, check her workspace," Linda ordered. Oscar moved quickly, uncovering a hidden compartment beneath Sophia's workbench. Inside was a tube of paint labeled Custom Venetian Blue, a pigment exclusive to the stolen painting. Sophia's defiance crumbled. "Fine," she spat. "But you'll never catch him." "Whew," Linda pressed. Sophia's lips curled into a bitter smile. The Phantom. The final chase. The Phantom was a ghost in the world of art crime, a figure of myth and legend. But Sophia's confession provided a crucial lead: a warehouse in the docks where the stolen painting was supposedly hidden. Linda and Oscar approached the location with caution. The air was thick with the scent of salt and oil, and shadows danced menacingly under the flickering streetlights. Inside, the warehouse was a labyrinth of crates and canvases. At its center stood a figure clad in black, the Venetian dream in hand. "Stop right there," Linda shouted, her gun drawn. The Phantom turned slowly, his face obscured by a mask. "Ah, Detective Hartley. I've heard of you. A worthy adversary at last." "Drop the painting and surrender," Linda commanded. The Phantom laughed, a low, chilling sound. "You'll have to catch me first." He bolted, weaving through the maze of crates. Linda and Oscar pursued, their footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. The chase culminated on a precarious catwalk high above the warehouse floor. "It's over," Linda yelled. The Phantom hesitated, the painting dangling precariously over the edge. "Is it?" he taunted. In a daring move, Linda lunged forward, tackling the Phantom. The painting slipped from his grasp but landed safely on a crate below. The mask came off, revealing a face Linda recognized all too well, an art dealer she had crossed paths with years ago. Justice served. Back at the station, the Venetian dream was returned to its rightful place, and the Phantom, or rather, Charles Monroe, was in custody. Linda and Oscar shared a rare moment of triumph. "Another masterpiece saved," Oscar said with a grin. Linda nodded, her eyes twinkling with determination. "And another criminal brought to justice. But something tells me this isn't the last we've seen of the Phantom." As they left the station, the rain had finally stopped, and the first rays of dawn painted the sky. For Linda Hartley and Oscar Reed, the case was closed, for now.
The corpse in the cave. Unravel. The wind howled through the narrow canyon, sending echoes that bounced off the jagged cliffs. Detective Linda Pierce tightened her scarf and glanced over her shoulder. Her partner, Detective Oscar Hale, trailed behind, his flashlight casting wild beams of light against the cave walls. They had been called out here at dawn after a hiker reported something strange inside a cave nestled deep in the wilderness. The dispatcher hadn't given many details, just that it involved a body. It was the kind of case that left an unsettling feeling in Linda's gut. As they approached the cave's entrance, the air grew colder. The scent of damp earth and mildew made Linda wrinkle her nose. "Ready?" Oscar asked, his voice low and tense. Linda nodded. "Let's do this." They stepped inside. Oh. The cave swallowed them whole. Shadows closed in, and the darkness seemed to pulse with a life of its own. The beam of Oscar's flashlight revealed slick rocks, dripping stalactites, and a floor scattered with debris. But the real focus was further in, where the beam fell upon a figure slumped against the cave wall. Linda's breath caught in her throat. It was a woman, mid-30s, maybe. Her eyes were closed, her head tilted slightly to the side, as though she had just fallen asleep. But the pallor of her skin and the stiff way her body rested told a different story. "Any ID?" Oscar muttered, stepping closer. Linda crouched and gingerly searched the woman's pockets. Her fingers closed around a leather wallet. She flipped it open. "Claire Monroe," Linda read aloud. 34. "Why does that name sound familiar?" Oscar frowned. Before Linda could answer, a gust of wind rushed through the cave, making an eerie whistling sound. She shivered. "We need to call this in," she said. And I want to know what Claire Monroe was doing out here. Oscar's jaw clenched. I have a feeling we're going to regret asking that question. They left the cave after securing the scene, their thoughts heavy. The sun had climbed higher, but the chill remained. The town of Pine Ridge was only 20 minutes away, a small cluster of buildings nestled in the valley. They drove in silence, each lost in thought. At the station, Linda reviewed the information they had on Claire Monroe. It wasn't much. She had lived alone, worked as a freelance writer, and kept mostly to herself. Something doesn't add up, Linda murmured, tapping her pen against her desk. Why would she be out in the middle of nowhere in that cave? Oscar looked up from his own notes. Maybe she was meeting someone, or hiding from someone. Before they could discuss it further, a knock on the door interrupted them. It was Officer Trent. Detectives, Trent said, his face pale. You need to see this. He handed Linda a manila envelope. Her heart thudded as she opened it. Inside were photographs. Grainy, black and white shots of Claire Monroe. In each photo, she was standing outside the cave, looking nervous. In one, she was glancing over her shoulder. In another, she was holding a folded piece of paper. These were taken yesterday, Trent said, by a wildlife camera near the cave. Linda's fingers tightened on the photos. She knew something, or someone was following her. Oscar's eyes narrowed. We need to go back to that cave. Oh. My. They arrived at the cave just as the sun dipped below the horizon. The world was bathed in twilight, and shadows grew long and sinister. Linda's instinct screamed that they were walking into a trap, but they had no choice. Inside the cave, the air was colder than before. They retraced their steps, the beam of their flashlights cutting through the gloom. The spot where Claire's body had been was now marked off with police tape. But something was wrong. Linda froze. The tape was torn. The rocks around the scene were disturbed, as though someone had been there recently. Someone's been here, Oscar whispered. A noise echoed from deeper within the cave. A soft scraping sound. Linda's pulse quickened. She exchanged a glance with Oscar. He nodded, and they moved forward slowly, their footsteps muffled by the damp ground. The tunnel narrowed, forcing them to walk single file. The scraping sound grew louder. They rounded a corner and froze. A figure stood hunched over a large open box. The man was gaunt, his hair wild and unkempt. He looked up, his eyes wide with panic. "Who are you?" Linda demanded. The man's mouth twisted into a snarl. "You shouldn't have come here." He lunged. Nice. Chaos erupted. Linda dodged to the side, barely avoiding the man's grasp. Oscar tackled him, and they crashed to the ground, struggling in the narrow space. The man fought like a cornered animal, his nails clawing at Oscar's face. "Get the cuffs," Oscar shouted. Linda fumbled for her handcuffs and snapped them around the man's wrists. He slumped, panting and defeated. "Who are you?" Linda asked again, her voice hard. The man laughed, a bitter, broken sound. "You don't get it, do you? Try me." He lifted his head, eyes gleaming with something close to madness. "Claire wasn't the first, and she won't be the last." A chill ran down Linda's spine. Oscar stood up, wiping blood from his cheek. "What do you mean?" The man's smile widened. "There are more secrets in this cave than you could ever imagine." Back at the station, the pieces began to fall into place. The man, Jonathan Cross, had been living off the grid for years. He was obsessed with the cave, convinced it held something valuable. Claire had stumbled onto his secret, and he had killed her to keep it safe. But the question remained, what was in the cave? Linda stared at the evidence board, her mind racing. They had a killer in custody, but the mystery wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Deal. Keto be continued.